I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed." And on the pedestal these words appear: "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away."
Hello, my name is Trippe, and this is my Ozymandias poetry presentation for Professor Fitzgerald's literature class. Ozymandias was a poem written by PB Shelly in 1818, and for those that don't know, Ozymandias was another name for the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II. And I'd like to discuss a couple elements about the poem. The first thing I want to talk about is the theme. Throughout history, men have tried to leave their immortal legacy by amassing worldly possessions. They do this without realizing that they themselves are only ordinary mortals who have to return to dust, along with all their endeavors. And most men's works and deeds and possessions that they accumulate will eventually fade from the memory of the human race altogether. But they have a hard time accepting that. The voice of the poem. The voice that we hear in the poem is a traveler from an antique land who said, and then they proceed to recount the story of their discovery in the desert. We also briefly hear the voice of Ozymandias himself as the inscription on the base of the statue is read.
"My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair."
Next, I'm going to talk about the type of poem and the time that the poem was written. It's a sonnet, which is a 14-line poem. Shelley uses enjambment and carries many sentences and ideas from one line to the next without a pause, and most of it without rhyme. And nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. It just flows from one line right to the next as it tells a story without the pause at the end of each line. And although this poem was written back in 1818, I found it remarkable that Shelley's theme of man's arrogance was almost like it was a prediction, and it was written way before its time, because the story of Ozymandias can be told of many men from the beginning of time even through today. Here's a picture I have to demonstrate that, and it's something that made me think about Ozymandias. The picture of the Nazi Party when Hitler used to have the speeches, and these pictures are hundreds of thousands of his soldiers, all listening to Hitler. He built the mighty Nazi regime, and at one time people say that he was the most powerful and influential man on earth. He had all this, and yet at the end, he died, hidden away, cowering in a bunker, and he died by his own hand. Today, there's not even a grave site for Hitler. Nothing beside remains, as in the poem Ozymandias. Now I want to move on to imagery. I've always loved ancient Egypt. This is a photo, and it's more like an artist's rendering of what ancient Egypt looked like during the rule of the pharaohs. So during the rule of Ozymandias, this might be one of many of his palaces look like. So when they say,
"Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair."
when that was actually said by Ozymandias and when it was actually carved onto the pedestal, he actually did have mighty works and mighty kingdoms and worldly possessions, and he had the world at his feet. So this is kind of like what it looked like when he did have that lion put into the pedestal. However, at the time that the traveler from an antique land is looking upon Ozymandias' statue and his legacy, this is what is left. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck. His colossal statue and his colossal works that were supposed to cause mighty men to despair have turned into a colossal wreck. And colossal is usually a word that we associate with something big and mighty and grand and usually something good, but when you pair it with the word wreck, colossal wreck, boundless and bare, just two words that exuberate this picture of how there was just nothing around to coincide with what he had written on that pedestal. The lone and level sand stretched far away. By looking at this picture, if this is what the traveler saw, it might seem that everything Ozymandias did was all for nothing. And you can just, the words, the lone and level sand stretching far away, it just gives you that sense of just emptiness and nothing. Also, to me, as they were going over the different types of poetry, I found a lot of irony in the poem. The poem uses irony because it compares the present condition of Ozymandias' statue to the inscription on the pedestal, like I was just speaking of. All that's left to remember the great Ozymandias is a shattered visage half sunk in the earth. The statue fell apart. There's just a broken face in the sand where there was once a mighty, mighty empire. No man is immortal. Ozymandias' kingdom is gone, covered by the sands of time. All that remains are two partial legs and a face of the Ozymandias statue with its sneer of cold command. And this expression was captured so brilliantly by its sculptor, and it will now be the only visible legacy to future generations of mankind of Ozymandias. The end.